Thank you for joining this conversation. You know, once in a while, I watch a show or a film that really strikes a chord. I recently watched Criminal Justice Behind Closed Doors. And I must confess, I started watching it at about 11 o'clock in the morning when I should have been working. And then I did nothing else for the rest of the day until I finished all 8 episodes. So thank you to the makers of the show and the cast, because for that one day, I was absolutely useless and I did no other work. But what a show. And dealing with an issue that is so sensitive and needs to be handled so carefully. And they do it so well. Now, for those of you who don't know, Criminal Justice Behind Closed Doors deals with marital rape. Marital rape is not a crime in our country, but it is what happens when a husband rapes his wife or has sex with her without her consent. In our country, it's not seen as a crime, which basically means that we view marriage as a blank check where women hand over consent for the rest of their lives. Technically, that's not how it works. And this has come up in courts, and there have been conversations about the fact that how would you ever prove this? Isn't the domestic violence laws enough? You know, the courts cannot get involved in what's going on inside someone's bedroom. But this show, it talks about a character, the lead character, Anuradha Chandra, who is the prime accused in her husband's murder. She stabs her husband, and everyone sees it as an open and shut case, but her lawyers don't give up on her. And the sort of recurring theme through the whole thing is that the lawyers refuse to give up on her. They're convinced that there's more to the story. And the further they dig, the more they discover signs of abuse that no one would have otherwise seen, because this husband in question was an all-round great guy and everybody loved him and nobody wanted to, see or acknowledge that there could have been more to it. The cast, Pankaj, Tripathi, Anupriya, Goenka, the amazing Kirti, Kulhari and Shilpa, Shukla are with us right now. They've been really sweet. They've agreed to this conversation. Also, I must also warn as a disclaimer to my audience, I might gush a little bit. I'm a huge fan of Pankaj Tripathi. This is the first time I'm getting a chance to have a conversation with him. So forgive me. All right. First of all, thank you. Thank you to the cast, to the makers of this show for making this show and dealing with this topic that nobody wants to talk about in our country because it's so weird. It's such a strange area to get into. It's even like I said, even in the courts, they've said, how would you ever prove something like this? And, that's actually my first question to the cast. And, Pankaj has said that he's not going to talk too much on this show. He's going to stay quiet. So I'm going to start with him so that we'll get him started off on why he decided to tell this story. And especially on a matter that's taboo, right? What happens between husband and wife is considered like this weird thing. In India, first of all, we don't acknowledge sex at all. And then it's like this, okay, let it just be in the bedroom. Let's not talk about it, even with our own families. So, Pankaj, thank you for speaking with me. Thank you for doing this amazing show. Tell us why you decided to tell this story.
मुझसे पूछ रही हैं?
जी, मैं आपसे पूछ रही हूँ.
हाँ, क्या? Tell us what?
ये जो आपने स्क्रिप्ट पढ़ी या ये जो स्टोरी थी, आपने इसमें ये पर्टिकुलर प्रोजेक्ट करने के लिए आप क्यों राजी हो गए?
क्योंकि मैं इसका सीजन 1 कर चुका था ऑलरेडी. सो मुझे सीजन 2 करना ही था. कहानी कुछ और भी होती तो भी करता, बट यस, ये कहानी में एक्साइटमेंट और एक और दूसरा पर्पस. जैसे सीजन 1 खत्म हुआ तो मुझे याद है अप्लॉज की टीम से हमारी एक मीटिंग हुई, समीर सर, दीपक जी, सिद्धार्थ. सो वो सेकंड का आइडिया दिए कि ऐसा इस एरिया में जा रहे हैं हम. तो मुझे वही लगा कि यार एक जरूरी बात है, एटलीस्ट इस पे बातचीत होनी चाहिए. और हम बात नहीं करते हैं तो एक जरूरी मुद्दा है और करते हैं, मजा आएगा. और मेरे लिए तो पार्ट 2 था, तो मुझे वैसे भी कहानी कुछ और भी होती तो भी करता, बट मेरा इंटरेस्ट बढ़ गया जब इस कहानी और इस प्रीमाइस और इस दुनिया को जाना. ये एक ऐसी चीज है जिसके बारे में हम बहुत कम बातें करते हैं.
और ये जो जब आप प्रेप कर रहे थे इस प्रोजेक्ट के लिए, तो आपने कुछ रिसर्च किया इसके बारे में? आपने कुछ पढ़ा इसके बारे में?
नहीं, बिल्कुल नहीं पढ़ा, क्योंकि मेरे पास समय ही नहीं था, मैं एक्सट्रीमली बिजी एक्टर था। इवन मैं इस सीरीज का पहला नरेशन राजस्थान में हुआ। मेरे सेट पे आए 2 राइटर बीबीसी से, अपलॉज से, मेरे सेट पे आके 2 घंटे के ब्रेक में मुझे फर्स्ट ड्राफ्ट सुना के लौट आए। सो अपूर्व विसरानी लिख रहे थे, तो मुझे लगा कि अब जब राइटर बढ़िया हो तो एक्टर को रिसर्च की जरूरत नहीं होती है। हमें लगता है कि हमारे तक जो मटेरियल पहुंचेगी वो बहुत ऑथेंटिक, वो वेल रिसर्च्ड और बहुत डेप्थ के साथ होगी। अगर अपूर्व विसरानी जैसा लेखक है और अपलॉज की टीम है, सो मैं हमेशा भरोसा करता हूँ अपने राइटर डायरेक्टर पे कि जो लोग लाएंगे वो सही लाएंगे।
Well, opening up about the actual issue at Question, I want to start with the ladies on the panel. Congratulations on this amazing show and the work that you guys are all doing. I think one of the first things that struck me about this story is the fact that the abuse happens in a well-to-do household. In a part of society perhaps that one would not expect abuse, in the household of a man who seems, pro-equality, pro-women. People think that he's a great guy. It also, it tells us that this is not, the abuse could happen everywhere. Kirti?
Absolutely, Faye. That's very. In fact, this was one of the points that, one of the initial first points that actually stuck with me. The fact that, of course, I kudos to Applause and BBC and Apoorv Visrani for taking this topic up. As Pankaj ji said, CJ2 फिर भी बनता और किसी भी कहानी पे बनता, किसी भी topic पे बनता, but बनता जरूर. But I think the fact that a topic like this, domestic abuse and marital rape, is kind of brought in with season 2 of a show like CJ2, I think, huge respect for the whole team and especially for the writer for kind of putting a very, very difficult subject, writing it so sensitively and so effectively. I think it really is something that needs to be applauded. Coming back to the point of, I remember very clearly that I was actually very excited about this one point that, when we talk about abuse, when we talk about something like a marital rape, we somehow associate it with it happening in the lower strata of the society. It's again a very, very strange conditioning. Maybe because they don't have anywhere to hide it. The lower stratas, they have everything out in the open. So whatever happens behind closed doors is kind of for everyone to know. So we assume that wahin pe hota hai ye sab. But the fact that in this particular case, you have somebody as somebody like an Anuradha Chandra, who is very well educated herself, is married to someone who's very influential, who's very successful, who belongs to the upper class of the society, and this happening to her, and then the story being told, I think was to actually break this idea of, it could happen to anybody, anywhere. It's not something that's restricted to what caste you belong to, what status you have in the society, which country you belong to. It is a universal subject. It is a universal problem, and it needs to be dealt in the same way. So I think this was one of the messages that we did want to convey through the show, for sure.
Of course, there were several other marriages in this show that were also at different degrees of being examined, right? So Anupriya is with us as well, and she plays one of the lawyers, whose mother is having a difficult time with her father. And I also thought it was interesting that, the thing that comes across in the show is the fact that not all abuse is physical. Right. There's a question that keeps coming up is he beating you? Mara pita kya tumhe data? As if that's the only form of abuse. And if there is no sign of that physical abuse, then there is no abuse. But all the marriages, in that show are at different degrees of suffering on some sense or the other. Anupriya, the idea that, and you said, your character says that dialogue, which is that, some abuse is also emotional and mental.
So Thank you, Faye. That's what I love about criminal justice behind closed doors, because for me, it's just not only about marital rape, also. It's about how systematically, because of the preconditioning, because of the way patriarchy works in a society, we women who are probably educated, who have all amenities at our disposal, uh, we are from well-to-do families, have had liberal lifestyles, probably are still suffering to find our identities. And for me, criminal justice, Anuchandra, what she's going through is more about how her identity was curbed and completely snatched away from her. Where a guy who can be completely doting on you, take care of you, give you all the worldly pleasures, but he doesn't give you the sort of space to grow, to blossom. In fact, curbs you and completely demolishes you as a human, along with marital rape. That's why I really credit Apurva Sani and all the makers, because as you said, they've brought in, characters which they've added from the adaptation. During the adaptation, they've added different characters who are women, who are from maybe strong job profiles, like someone who's playing a cop. I'm playing a lawyer. The judge has a certain point of view. Meeta ma'am's character, who's a very feminist sort of a woman, she also sides with patriarchy because she can also be blindsided. A
Hmm.
guy as sweet and sensible as Madhav Mishra is also somewhere falling prey to it with his own wife and his own domesticity. So they've shown how patriarchy has completely been ingrained into our system. And even we women sometimes fail to recognize it when it's happening to us, and we are still struggling in order to break free. And it's so true that marital rape is something which is just not recognized. Mostly, don't people don't even think, women think that it's their obligation to always give in to their husbands. And yes, I find that very interesting, and it's a difficult one to answer as to how we be able to bring it in court and make it criminalize it. And but that's a discussion that really needs to take place. I'm happy that because of the writer bringing in these sensibilities and the makers making a show like this discussion at least is taking place, where people, at least women, would know that they have a right to say no, even in a relationship.
But Shilpa Shukla is with us, and she plays a convict. And again, the interesting part about all of the scenes that happen inside of the jail, even though there are only women, but the presence of their respective husbands is there, because there's this dialogue of, you wouldn't find a woman in here whose husband has not abused her in some way, or who has not been abused in some way by somebody or the other. Shilpa, do you think that on some level also um, we've normalized that abuse, that to some level one has to adjust, put up with it? Women are the ones who sort of have to find a way to make it work. Women
Absolutely,
have that
absolutely. And
sensitivity.
I feel that, a lot of it comes from, the issue of self-esteem. And I think it has nothing to do with education or which strata do we belong to. In fact, I've also noticed that the have-nots have a better sense of self-esteem than a lot of rich people in our society. And of course, I mean, women, I mean, that's the positive side of the feminine, that, they are the nurturers and, things like that. But there is also, a limit to it, I think, which is what we don't understand, and it's a very thin line. And definitely I think we need to be vocal about it, and we need to have dialogues around it, because 21st century, we say, is the century for having dialogues, and a lot of things can be resolved just by talking about it. And that's why a show like Criminal Justice does become very important, because it's talking about something that no one ever thought needs to be addressed. So but at the same time also understanding, like, the deeper conditioning there, and do we just want to punish the people who are doing this, or do we really want to, like, transform something from within? Because because do we really just want to call someone wrong and someone is right, and do we just want to live like that? Because I don't think so, that the world that we want to create is going to come out of this right and wrong. It is going to come through transformation. So yes, women are uh, very powerful, and of course they are very compassionate, but there is a limit to everything. Yeah.
You know, but I want to ask all of you this, and we were chatting a little bit before we started the show about what changes we can make, and you brought it up, Shilpa, about how we want to achieve that change. And this thing of women knowing that they now have the right to say no. But, and this is genuinely a question I ask, if the law doesn't recognize that a wife's right to say no to her husband, and she does say no, and he forces her anyway, then what? Where do we go without the law being changed? Where do we go from there? How do we make that change? Kirti?
So Faye, for one thing I really want to, talk about, because I remember even in the introduction, you spoke about women being raped, but I just want to bring, because this is a platform that's going to reach a lot of people, I want people to know that rape can also happen to men. There are marital rapes that happen to men as well, so this discussion is, of course, the stories of Anuradha Chandra. Of course, there are more women, much more women compared to men who go through what we are talking about. But there are also enough men who go through different kinds of abuses in a relationship and a marriage. And while technically, if you look at it, we think of a man cannot be raped, but that's absolutely wrong, because a man can be raped. And I am saying this on the basis of my research that I did for the character when I met a couple of psychiatrists, and I spoke about these kind of issues, and they brought to my notice that this happens to men as well. So let's I want to talk for everybody. Consent is as important for women as it's important for men, because it's about respecting the other human being for just being another human being. Coming to the question of, if it's not recognized by the law, what do we do about it? I think of course, it's a huge problem that this is not recognized by the law as something being wrong, which really needs to change. And yes, it is not going to be easy, because it all happens behind closed doors, and when these conversations do come out in the open, it is truly a case of my word against yours. My lawyer representing me is going to, I'm going to tell you my side of the story, and more than my side, maybe my version of the story, and the same goes for the other party. So it's going to be a clash of whose word against whose, so it is going to be a very, very tough task to kind of from law perspective, because everything said and done, law goes by evidences. They want evidences to prove anything, which works and which also doesn't work. But I think I think the stronger the not everything that's wrong in the world is, a lot of things are actually not supported by the law. A lot of things are not seen as wrong in the eyes of the law. So what do we do about these things? Now, first of all, I think in this case, when something is happening to you, when you are experiencing something that you in your gut know that is not right, you don't even have to be told by another person or taught by another person from the very childhood that ye acha touch hota hai, ye bura touch hota hai, ye aise hota hai, ye waise hota hai. But just the fact that when you are with someone and you are in that intimate space with someone, something doesn't feel right, something doesn't feel right. And I think the starting point and the end point of all of this is going to be speaking for yourself, standing up for yourself, expressing yourself, sharing what you are feeling. And in this respect, it is not just my responsibility. If I'm the victim of it, it's not just my responsibility, but people around me, people who I call family, who so many times dismiss the idea of getting in the way or interfering because it's between the couple. दो लोगों के आपस की बात है, हमें क्या जरूरत है. I think these sound like very these sound like conditionings that are that have become so normal. Like it's just accepted. This is what you're taught when you're growing up, by your own family, by your own parents, before you go into another family, and the other family also approaches all these things the same way. So it's a huge conditioning there, which we have completely normalized. And I think knowing when to step in, if I will speak up, no matter what I'm going through, I will only speak up when I know there are people around me who listen to me. So I think creating a space, especially in a family, because we are calling it a family, and it just means that you are creating a space which is made of trust, which is made of love, which is made of acceptance. And I think starting a dialogue there, because so many things, so many times, big problems, small problems, as Shilpa just said, that so many things can be transformed just through a dialogue. So I think starting a dialogue, which basically starts with the victim herself, himself, is a very, very important step in this direction.
Really well said. Anupriya, there's also this idea of shame, right? That the victim here, the abused person, tends to believe that there's a certain amount of shame attached to it. We have to hide it. I can't talk about it. I can't tell other people what's going on in my life.
So it's the same thing. I mean, as things stand today, shows like criminal justice, these widespread conversations, these discussions where you first of all educate and make women aware of the fact that even in a marriage, even in a relationship, be it a live-in of any sort also, you have the right to say no. It's your body, it's your right. Again, as Kirti said, men and women both. And there is no shame attached to it. If you're being violated, the person who's violating you is supposed to be shameful, not you. Taking that away. And I think these discussions need to start now as we are from childhood. Maybe the schools have to bring it in, maybe the parents have to start talking about it. And that's the culture, for courts to say or for people to say कि दो husband wife के बीच में क्या हो रहा है is their personal matter. It is not, because that's the society you're building up. That those are the households you're creating, and that's going to have a ripple effect on everybody. So that's what you're constructing in generation after generation. So it's high time that people start stepping in, and for that awareness is much more important. And for that, people need to start talking. So I think first of all, content like this needs to become more widespread. One of the easiest ways to get to people is through cinema, is through entertainment, or is through people who they follow, or people who influence their mindset. Then again, like I would like to say and even confess that most of the times, the maids who come and work for me, when they talk about the marriage, my first question is, "Marta Pitta hai kya?" Because I'm so used to hearing that. And when they say, "नहीं Marta Pitta तो नहीं है, कमाता नहीं है," ना like, "अच्छा चलो इतना ये तो एक sorted है," but that's not the point.
Yeah.
Respect between both the individuals, taking equal responsibility, giving your partner the space to be and grow, and respecting their body and their psyche is way more important. So I just like to add to the fact about the criminalization in courts. So once we create awareness, probably and hopefully that will also help in creating an environment where people can start having that discussion with their family, with their friends. I think at some point in time, when people need to start creating witnesses to what's going to happen to them, by way of going out to psychiatrists, or by documenting stuff, by talking to their friends over a course of time, so that if at all it ever comes to a point where we can take it in court, you have a string of witnesses who are there to support you with documentation, with testimony perhaps. And even if at all, go videotape it in the age of mobile phones. Put a mobile phone there, man, and have it documented for you to show to people. Use that.
In fact, what you said is so true, because this happens a lot in our in our societies, right? When you can hear someone fighting in your neighborhood, in your building, there's always this, अरे यार उनकी आपस की बात है, घर की बात है, तुम लोग मत घुसो उसमें. Don't go ring the bell. Don't go ask what is going on. It's a private matter. Why should we get involved? And a lot of times that ringing the bell, or just asking what is going on, asking the person if they're okay, is the difference between life and death. It's the difference between that person being able to come out and talk about it. Pankaj ji, the other, obviously, like that has been pointed out by your colleagues, one of the things is that women will watch a show like this and realize that they have agency and they can say no. But क्या आपको लगता है कि ऐसे एक शो देख के ऐसे काफी सारे हस्बैंड्स होंगे जिनको पता चलेगा कि अच्छा ऐसा भी है, मतलब अपनी हक नहीं है, अगर हमने हमारी शादी हो गई इसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि मतलब अनलिमिटेड हक है अपनी वाइफ पे?
यस बिल्कुल बिल्कुल। क्या होता है ना कि कई चीजें जानबूझ के की जाती हैं, कई चीजें अनजाने में होती हैं, कई चीजें कंडीशनिंग की वजह से होती हैं। जैसे मैं बहुत सुंदर बोली दोनों में, बड़ा इत्मीनान से सुना और बहुत डिटेल में सुना। तो मैं सुनते हुए मेरे मन में एक ख्याल चल रहा था कि वो कई चीजें, कई पुरुष ऐसे हैं जो सच में वो जानबूझ के नहीं करते हैं। उन्हें तो लगता है कि वो कंडीशनिंग है कि यही है, ऐसा ही होता है, मतलब इसमें क्या, इसमें कौन सी बात है। कि एक मुझे याद है कि कहीं किसी मोहल्ले से एक लड़का और एक लड़की प्रेम में भाग जाते हैं घर छोड़ के। लड़के के पेरेंट्स को, माँ बाप को क्या इज्जत कम जाता है, लड़की के माँ बाप का इज्जत ज्यादा चला जाता है। क्योंकि लगता है लड़की इनकी गई है तो लड़की वालों की ज्यादा इज्जत जाती है। भाई भागे दोनों है तो या तो इक्वल इज्जत जानी चाहिए दोनों परिवारों की, या तो बिल्कुल नहीं जानी चाहिए। सो वो कंडीशनिंग है कि हम, लड़की भाग गई तो हमारी लगता है कि ये इज्जत नाक कट गया, इज्जत चली गई। लड़का भाग गया तो कोई बात नहीं, वो तो लड़का है। सो वो कंडीशनिंग ऐसी है कि कई बार शायद ये शो को कोई पति देखेगा और उसको हो सकता है कि ये समझ आए कि हाँ यार, मतलब हम, या तो मैं गांव से आता हूं, मैं, मेरे लिए ये बहस का मुद्दा बनना, मैं हमने जाना ही नहीं था, कुछ सुना ही नहीं था। अगर मैं शायद आज भी गांव पे होता तो मैं पहले बोलता कि जी नहीं, मैं इसकी बोलता कि ये, इसकी क्या जरूरत है, ये तो झूठ मूठ का, ये मॉडर्न लोगों का ढकोसला है या ये फेमिनिज्म है। और शायद मेरे गांव के 90% पुरुष यही बोले। लेकिन मैं दुनिया की किताबें पढ़ा, घूमा, टीचरों से मिला, संसार देखा, मैं भी धीरे धीरे सीखा। एक पढ़ी लिखी लड़की मेरे जीवन में आई, उसने कुछ समझाया, फिर मैं आर्ट फील्ड में आ गया। तब जाके मुझे लगा कि नहीं नहीं यार, मैं अपनी पत्नी से एक दिन बात कर रहा था तो मैं बोला यार मैं कैसे बदल गया। मैं अभी भी गांव जाता हूँ, मैं गांव में अपने बैचमेट्स, अपने गांव के बच्चों का, मतलब मेरे जो दोस्त साथी थे उनका पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू सोचता हूँ तो मुझे लगता है यार कि मुझमें इनमें अंतर हो गया है सोचने के लेवल पे। तो मेरी बीवी बोली है कि तुम इवॉल्व होने को तैयार थे, इसलिए तुम इवॉल्व हुए। अब मैं कैसे इवॉल्व हुआ, उसमें किताबों का योगदान हो सकता है, उसमें कहानियों का योगदान हो सकता है, उसमें लिटरेचर का, सिनेमा का, उसमें बहुत सारे ऐसी बातचीत सुनने का, संगीत का, पेंटिंग का, किसी भी चीज का हो सकता है। सो यस, हमारे शो से हो सकता है कि कुछ पुरुष देखें और वो थॉट उनके दिमाग में जाए और कुछ भी बदलाव, या आप बदलते हो तो पहले एक विचार, एक छोटी सी विचार से एक कहानी पैदा होती है और वो कहानी बहुत सारे लोगों के दिमाग में एक छोटा सा विचार देती है कि भाई दुनिया को देखने का नजरिया ऐसा भी हो सकता है। सो यस, ऑफ कोर्स।
और आपकी जो कैरेक्टर है माधव मिश्रा, the interesting part for me was that through a very hard and a very serious topic, there was a certain amount of lightness that was brought in by Madhav Mishra's relationship with his own wife, it was lighter. There were moments of comedy there, but there was also dysfunction there. उसमें भी थोड़ी कमी थी वो relationship में. It took him the entire season to sort of come close to his wife. In your mind, how did you see that relationship? How did you justify the relationship in your head when you were playing it?
दो चीजें थी जो शायद मैं न करते हुए डायरेक्टर को बताया हूँ, ना मैं किसी को नहीं बताया हूँ, राइटर को भी। जब सीजन 1 मैं कर रहा था तो माधव मिश्रा की शादी नहीं थी और उनके पैर में एक्जिमा होता था, पैर में, और जब ये स्ट्रेस में बढ़ जाते थे केस में तो वो बढ़ता था, गर्दन तक आ गया था आदित्य के केस में, मतलब सीजन 1 में। सीजन 2 में इन्होंने एक्जिमा वाला वो डिजीज नहीं रहा। तो सीजन 1 में एक आध सीक्वेंस था जहाँ पे कुछ लड़कियां आती हैं पुलिस थाने में और माधव से बड़ी फ्रेंडली उसको चिकोटी काटती है, क्या रे मिश्रा कैसा है तू। तो लगता है कि ये या तो डांस बार की लड़कियां हैं या पता नहीं कौन है। माधव का तो मैंने सीजन 1 में मेकर्स राइटर से पूछा कि यार माधव मिश्रा का क्या है, मतलब ये व्यक्ति, इनका सेक्सुअल ओरिएंटेशन कुछ तो होगा ना बतौर पुरुष, या तो ब्रह्मचारी होंगे, ये इनका उसमें कोई रुचि नहीं होगा, या कुछ तो होंगे। तो उन्होंने बोला नहीं, हमको उस एरिया में जाना नहीं है, ओरिजिनल में था लेकिन हमें, और मैंने सीरीज ओरिजिनल नहीं देखी है ना 1 ना 2, सो उन्होंने बोल दिया कि नहीं हमें उसमें नहीं जाना है, जो लिखा है वही कर लो। सीजन 2 में मेरी शादी हो जाती है, शादी भी दिखा मुझे कि माँ के दबाव में होता है। सो मैंने अपने मन में उसके लिए लॉजिक बनाया कि जैसे सीजन 1 में जब ये स्ट्रेस में होता है तो इसको एक्जिमा होता था, यहाँ ये बीबी से फिजिकली इसलिए भाग रहा है ना कि एक तो हमने इसका सेक्सुअल ओरिएंटेशन दिखाया नहीं है, ये ब्रह्मचारी है, इनका इंटरेस्ट नहीं है, ये होमोसेक्सुअल है, क्या है राम जाने, कुछ पता नहीं है। तो मैंने अपने लिए मोटिवेशन बनाया कि इसका वो स्ट्रेस है मुकदमे का, जिसकी वजह से उस समय एक्जिमा हुआ, इस समय बीवी से दूर हो रहा है, और जब केस जीतने के बाद बोलता कि अब चलते हैं गोवा, वो बोलती है पर कपड़े तो पैक नहीं किए, तो बोलता कपड़े कौन पहनता है गोवा में। सो ये किसी को मैंने नहीं बोला और किसी ने समझा भी नहीं होगा, बट मेरे मन में ये एक मोटिवेशन था। वो स्ट्रेस है जिसकी वजह से पहले इनको स्किन डिजीज होता था, वो एक्जिमा की प्रॉब्लम थी, एक साइकेट्रिस्ट के यहाँ गए थे, उन्होंने बोला था कि अंदर से क्लीन करो, बाहर से ये प्रॉब्लम अंदर की है। चूंकि इसमें कहानी बहुत इंटेंस थी, सीरियस थी, तो जानबूझ के ये थोड़ा सा लाइटर एलिमेंट रखा गया था कि ऑडियंस को बीच बीच में रिलीफ भी मिले, नहीं तो गंभीर कहानी में थोड़ा रिलीफ मिले तो अच्छा लगता है कि चलो यार हाँ। सो एक इसलिए भी लाइटर था, और मेरे मन का मोटिवेशन ये था जो किसी को नहीं पता, शायद मैं आज बताया आपको।
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. But I do want to ask you all this. Whoever wants to answer this question, there's the pivotal moment in the show when it is discovered that the lead character's newborn baby is not her husband's; it is her psychiatrist, right? There's a sinking feeling that that for the audience, at least for me, that have I misunderstood everything? What's going on? So there's this whole moment of confusion because we are rooting behind Anuradha Chandra, but and for me again, the understanding in most of our films and cinema so far is that if a woman is good, she has to be complete, she has to be a saint, right? But Devi honi chahiye. And if she's done something wrong, then we should write her off. Then it's useless. Then she's a bad person. Then there's no point, supporting her or rooting for her anymore. And I love the fact that this show gives us a person who is not, she's not a Sati Savitri. She's not flawless. She's flawed. She's also made mistakes. But we have to still root for her because her agency is still important. So, Kirti, if you want to, answer that question about that sort of gray area that she also treated. Yeah.
Absolutely, Faye. I think, this was what you just said is something that was actually a part of the original plot point. The fact that in a way the audiences are rooting for her, because you don't know what she has done, why she has done. But when this point comes out, so it's like till the time she's pregnant with Bikram's child, there's a certain empathy for her. There's a certain like, okay, let's take care of her, whatever, because she's a pregnant woman, and the child is obviously the husband's. But the moment you find out the child is not the husband's but another man's, you again like start. You basically put into a spot, because now you are like, now suddenly Anuradha Chandra is not something towards Anuradha Chandra has again changed, which is I think a big deal in our society. As you rightly said, we somehow, as जो भी पंकज जी ने बात की कि अगर लड़का लड़की भाग जाते हैं तो लड़की के माँ बाप को ज्यादा शर्म आती है, शर्म तो दोनों को बराबर आनी चाहिए. Similarly, in this case also, a man might have a child with another woman, but that is somehow not looked at as so piercingly as when the woman has something like this, So in this case also, Faye, I think from speaking on Anuradha's behalf, this particular point of why would someone like an Anuradha Chandra also go and do something like this? So from a story perspective, the idea behind that was that this woman, firstly, look at her. I mean, she, in the name of sex, all she is being given is a punishment, you know. On top of that, something like anal sex, which is not so pleasant for a lot of people, you know. So for her, her whole idea about sex has gone for a toss. Okay, she probably hasn't been, you know, touched and kissed or, you know, held in a way that a normal woman would also want to be. And in this case, she's an extreme case of abuse. So you are desiring that touch, you know, that simple touch of intimacy, or that little bit of care, you know. And so this is one reason, probably reason why she lets go in that moment. Also, from another perspective, this is see, the act of stabbing for Anuradha Chandra, stabbing her husband, is wasn't the original plan. She wanted to kill herself. She didn't even have the guts to stab the abuser, you know. That's how weak she was. She wanted to kill herself, which is what a lot of people would do, you know. It starts with okay, if this is happening to me, something wrong is happening to me, to shayad mujh mein hi kuch kami hogi, you know. This in Anuradha's case has gone to an extreme where she's like, you know what, I think I am this, killing myself is the solution to all of this, you know, because maybe the problem is genuinely with me. Now so she's somebody who's very weak. She's somebody who has lost all hope. This one moment was her, when she lets go with the other guy, was her moment of agency. Talking about agency now, again, these things are never as black and white as acha are you loyal to your husband or are you not loyal to your husband. Why are you not loyal to your partner also has a lot of reasoning to it, you know, a reasoning which probably we do not see with the naked eye. For us, this is like, ye galat hai, ye sahi hai, the morals of the society, the way they are. But in this case, it was her way, maybe that one moment where she felt, you know what, I'm going to do this because I'm still something. Kuch hai mujh mein, kuch to hoga mujh mein, you know, that I can take a call for myself. She knew this was wrong. She knew in her actual senses, she probably would have never done it, you know, but in that moment, it just felt like the only way to make her feel that she still had some control herself. So I think she just lets go in that moment. And again, I mean, yeah, as I said, it's an important plot point of the story, but this is how we looked at Anuradha's action, you know, this particular action. And this is our job, Faye, like as an actor, when you're telling a story, as a writer, you have to go into the grays, you know, you have to go into the darkness. You just cannot, the fight is not between right and wrong, you know. It seems like that on the surface, but there is so much more going on inside all of us in ways that even we cannot comprehend, you know, so many times. And that's why people suggest that when you cannot make sense of your life and where you're going, go to a friend. Even better, go to a psychiatrist, go to a psychologist, because this is what they have studied for, to give you a perspective and to give you a very neutral perspective. They are not there to judge you, you know. And I think so as actors, you know, we cannot, it's just amazing how you start seeing the world in gray, you know, and do not get attached to black and white so much, because if you do, I think what Pankaj was talking about, your evolution lies in the fact that you can see things from various perspectives and not be stuck with the perspective that you are conditioned to in ways that even you don't realize for a long time in your life that you're actually conditioned to.
Really well said. Shilpa, you play also a flawed character, right? A flawed woman who's looking at her own benefit. There's also a great amount of empathy. And those scenes inside of jail are extremely powerful because these are all women, which is again pointed out, who've done horrible things, who've done terrible things to, to be in prison to begin with. But there's a kinship that they develop. They have children in jail. They're looking after each other. There's a sort of, unsaid thing about the fact that we're all walking wounded on some level, right? It's only that kinship among women of looking after each other that, that can result in survival.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, also they don't have a choice. And in this case, it's beautiful in a way, because it is what it is. And yes, of course, as humans, we are bound to experience all the emotions that we experience, and whether you're in a jail or outside of a jail, so yes, in that sense, it does evoke a lot of empathy for inmates, and even though they've done things that are criminal in nature, but yes, there is this human element to every individual. As long as you're alive, there is this chance of change of heart. There's this, chance of redemption and stuff like that. And that's what makes them very, very, matlab insaan banata hai, basically.
Faye, sorry. I just want to say one quick thing about this whole jail thing. Again, talking about Anuradha, and how she was for the world in the open world, and yet she failed. Yet she felt so jailed inside, and when she actually goes to the jail, and that time that she actually spends in the jail, for whatever it's worth, for the first time in so many years, she's actually able to breathe. She's living in the worst conditions. She's always, her life is always at stake. She's being, battered, like she's been just, called all sorts of names from all the sides. And yet, if you see the difference between Anuradha, pre and, during the jail time, there is a sense of freedom that she experiences while being in the jail. So as Shilpa said, it's not about the space you're in. You could be in a palace, and you could be feeling so.
There is that other character who keeps finding her way back into jail just so she can take herself and her son away from her abusive husband. And I remember there's that one scene where Anuradha is talking to her two lawyers, and she starts to talk about how her husband was keeping tabs on everything in her life. It was it was almost as if I expected her to say that, why in jail is the only time that I've I've had some relief from this, because it was almost a natural progression to what she was, telling her lawyers. But Anupriya, you brought up the cop, and there's again an interesting angle of the cop's marriage. There are two cops in a marriage in this show, and there's a huge emotional arc for the female cop, who discovers through the course of this show that she has also in some way been a victim of abuse. And she starts to, when she starts off as a cop, but towards the end of the film begins to identify with the woman who is in the dock, with the accused in this particular case. And that, for working women, there's an interesting dialogue that keeps coming up where her husband keeps telling her that, listen, this is not your cop station. You are now at home. You are a different person at home. You can keep your work wherever you want to keep it. But when you're at home, I expect you to be the wife. I expect you to be the daughter-in-law. You have a role to play, and you cannot mix these two. This is a very real thing that women have experienced, especially during the lockdown.
True. So first of all, I love the way both Kalyani and Atit have played out their parts. I wish they were here, because one line that Kalyani says in the end, her character Gauri, that मैं तुम्हारी वाइफ हूँ, सही है, but तुम उसका मतलब नहीं समझते. This says so much in that one line. She's really kind of captured everything between the two of them, and that's what I was trying to say in the beginning too. That Ateet's character too, seemingly Pradhan, is a nice, loving husband, though, but very, in very small gestures here and there, वो उसको जताते रहता है कि तुम्हारा घर है ये, मैं पति हूँ तुम्हारा, and हम लोग ये accept कर लेते हैं. ये हमारे relationships में भी होता है. That the boyfriend will say कि अरे we trust, मैं तुम्हें trust करता हूँ but उस लड़के को trust नहीं करता हूँ. Arey, I care for you, that's why I'm like this. You're mine. Repeat that you're mine. And we thinking कि हाँ, this is a form of love, but we don't realize कि कब वो हमारी life में पूरी तरह से छा जाता है. And we kind of start, like limiting ourselves and our individuality or our womanness. And we stop exploring that. We keep telling ourselves कि हाँ, nurturing a kid is my responsibility. Taking care of the mother, cooking, all of this is my responsibility. It's not a combined responsibility for everyone in the household. So all this needs to start changing, and that will only happen when we start talking about it, we start pointing it out, or we start, in fact, giving ourselves the liberty of voicing our opinion.
The agency for the cop who's very good at her job and obviously wants to do well, doesn't want to be pregnant, gets sort of pressured into it, and is not happy when she discovers that she is pregnant because it was not her choice. I mean, something as massive and life-altering as that, where the husband says that mood nahi hai to kya mood bana denge, which is that. Imagine being disappointed in being pregnant because nobody gave you that choice. That's such a lesson in agency.
And that's only a woman's choice. I strongly believe whether you want to have a child or you don't, even if you become pregnant, if you want to abort the child, that is only and only a woman's right first and foremost. She can ask everyone, she can take opinions, she can discuss it. Yes, maybe with the father too, because he also has a part and emotion invested. But finally, it has to be the woman's choice whether you want to become pregnant or you want to bring a life to this world or not, and if you're ready for it. There is no, there cannot be a discussion over this at all.
Yeah, absolutely. On a different note, it has been reported that during the lockdown, all of the things that gave women agency, which is the free birth control that the government would distribute, had actually stopped. The fact that they couldn't go to work and they were in the house all the time. The fact that a lot of times their husbands who are also their abusers were cut off from alcohol, which means they were having withdrawal symptoms, has led to a sharp spike in the number of unwanted pregnancies in this country. That we're going to see a spiraling impact of abandoned babies, abused women, that sort of thing happen over the next couple of months. It's amazing how women exist in the gray, like quite rightly said by Kirti. And when there are sweeping social changes like a lockdown, that gray disappears. The ability to talk to your friends, the ability to get those few minutes of silence in your job or get away from home for a bit to be yourself, that gray sort of disappears and you get trapped in the black and the white. I'm quickly running out of time, but I want to give you guys space and each of you to talk about what you hope this show would have achieved, or what you saw as the biggest message from the show. Pankaj, you've already talked about this, but this whole idea of the fact that जो घर के अंदर हो जाती है हम बात नहीं करते उसके बारे में, हम अपने पेरेंट्स के साथ भी बात नहीं करते. After we get married, we don't even tell our parents what goes on between husband and wife, right? It's considered taboo in India to talk about it at all. So who is going to teach young people what's okay and what's not okay? If everyone is just going to learn from popular culture, or they're going to learn from random unofficial sources, the challenge really is in being able to educate both boys and girls in what's okay and what's not okay.
बहुत सुंदर. मुझे ना आपके बोलते एक लाइन ने ख्याल आया कि हम अपने पेरेंट्स से घर में भी, हमारे गांव में ना अक्सर बोलते थे लोग, बचपन में सुना हूं मैं 10वीं क्लास तक, कि लड़कियां जो है वो गाय के समान होती हैं, एक खूंटे से खुल के दूसरे खूंटे में बंधा जाती हैं. ये मैं सुना हूं बचपन में 10वीं क्लास में, कि गाय एक खूंटे में रहती है, वहां से निकल के दूसरे खूंटे में बंध गई. और एक बहुत बहुत खूबसूरत कहानी है फणीश्वरनाथ रेणु की, संबदिया मैसेंजर, हिंदी में वो स्टोरी है. सो कैसे बेटी जो है वो बहुत क्राइसिस में है और वो अपनी बदहाली की खबर अपने माँ को नहीं देना चाहती है, और एक दिन एक मैसेंजर के थ्रू भेज देती है, और वो मैसेंजर वहां पहुंचता है और मैसेंजर का कॉन्फ्लिक्ट चलता है कि मैं, बहुरानी है मेरे गांव की, वो खबर उनकी माँ को सुनाऊं या न सुनाऊं. सो खैर, करेक्ट, आपने बहुत सही बोला कि ये तो है ही, वो समस्या है ही कि हम कौन सिखाएगा लड़कियों को कि यार प्रॉब्लम है तो बातें करो, बताओ, किसी अपने घर वालों से ही शेयर कर लो. हमें जितना हो सकता है कहानियों के थ्रू कहते हैं, करते हैं.
I think Faye, I mean, honestly, I really believe that, I think zyadatar, and maybe I'll just say almost everything boils down to what हर चीज का solution है when you are growing up, what you are being taught, what you see, what you're being exposed to, what you observe. So I think first of all, बात बहुत simple है. बात जो consent की होती है वो mutual respect की होती है. एंड रिस्पेक्ट दो तरह से होता है. एक जब आपको सेल्फ रिस्पेक्ट सिखाया जाता है, आप जब छोटे होते हैं, उसके क्या मायने होते हैं, what exactly is the meaning of self respect. And because when you have self respect, you automatically start respecting others and their space. So ये बहुत sensitive चीजें हैं जो जिनका जवाब actually it lies in very small yet super important things when you are growing up, and this distinction, I have started having a big problem with this distinction that's growing in the world of between men and women. Somehow everything is now about men versus women. It's becoming like a war, which is absolutely unhealthy. And I think when you're growing up, to just have a space in the house which is
Correct.
made of equality, which is not based on your gender, for both men and women, because girls might have a different kind of a conditioning thrown at them, but so do men, so do boys when they're growing up. And दोनों को तोड़ने में उतनी ही जद्दोजहद लगती है when you grow up, when you're growing up. One's pain or one's challenges are not lesser or more than the others. We have to understand that we all have challenges of different kinds, but we all have challenges. So I think just in a home, if you can be taught values of just how to be human, man. Just ये बहुत बड़ी बातें कर रहे हैं हम लोग. Discussion में बहुत मजा आता है, बहुत बड़ी philosophical बातें होती हैं. We use very big words, but it boils down to just understanding that we are all human beings, and at the most basic level, we all need the same thing that the other person does. So we have to learn a way to offer it to ourselves and then to offer it to others. So it's just something that is only these fundamental changes can only happen when you are a child. आप 30 साल की उम्र में, 25 साल की उम्र में, you have seen too much life, you have experienced too much to keep breaking that. ये जो छोटी उम्र होती है, जो बहुत ही सेंसिटिव उम्र होती है, इसमें जो होता है ना, वो आपकी जिंदगी भर चलता है. So that is the age that I think everyone needs to really focus on at home, in school. Like I am like, why is spirituality not a part of our curriculum in the schools? Why is it not taught? गीता क्यों नहीं पढ़ाई जाती है, कुरान क्यों नहीं पढ़ाई जाती है, क्यों नहीं? Why aren't we focusing on things that really matter in schools? We are focusing on everything else. क्यों नहीं? I mean, some schools, some privileged schools have counselors and psychologists and all that, child psychologists. Let's make it a part of the curriculum, man. Have someone compulsorily. So बहुत चीजें हैं जो fundamental level पे ही change हो सकती हैं, and we have to work towards that. Otherwise, all this will just remain a topic of discussion when we are at the age that all of us are at.
Anupriya?
So I agree that everything has to start from the childhood, and how you speak about the importance of consent, the importance of respecting each other as a human being, of for women to be financially independent, because that also is a huge, constraint. Like if the woman is going through some, let's say, and I'm saying women more here because most of the times the men are earning in our household. So if the woman is earning and is self-sufficient, or at least has enough education to support herself, sometimes the family does give her space to talk about such things. Otherwise, वही हो जाता है कि how will you support, तो बस लेते रहो जो हो रहा है. But it is going to be a combination of both our generation and what we are building. आज जैसे पंकज सर का transformation हुआ when he was growing up, because of the books, because of the cinema, because of his partner, because of his environment that he has shifted to, thanks to him being an artist. Similarly, I have taken something from my mother. I have seen certain things where she is very, conservative and orthodox, and I have kind of realized that it is inside of me also, and I need to change that through realizing it. And now I know that if I have a child tomorrow, and if I see children or families around me, how I need to go ahead and keep communicating what I have come to realize of, you know, like stop looking away. If tomorrow there is something happening on the road, and I might have my busy life, and I might be very, you know, like not sure of whether I can intervene. But as a human being, if you see something wrong happening, intervene. It doesn't really have to be in your own household at all. Wherever you see it, let's just start looking around and poking our noses for a change also sometimes. It's important. And
Very beautifully said. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I mean, you know, हम लोग खाली ये नहीं वेट कर सकते कि आज हमारा बच्चा होगा हम उसको करेंगे. आसपास भी हो रहा है, मेरी फैमिली में हो रहा है, किसी और की फैमिली में हो रहा है, एटलीस्ट बोलो तो सही. Say it out loud. And I think mostly what's important is, as Kirti's character says, shame, that part, needs to get attached to the perpetrator rather than to the abuser, rather than to the victim. And that will happen when the family members, when the friends start giving them that look, when your colleague starts giving them that, you know, that deriding look, ki, oh my God, did you really hit your wife? Or oh my God, are you abusive towards your husband? That is it. And that can change only when we start looking at each other more deeply.
Shilpa?
Yeah, I think one thing that is very significant is, and His Holiness the Dalai Lama puts it very beautifully, is about hygiene of emotions. You know, all of this I think stems from what kind of emotions do we have, you know, and we do not recognize how negative or positive it is, whether it is, you know, anger, compassion, empathy, whatever. And I think we need to study the emotions from every point of view. And it used to happen in the ancient Nalanda tradition, you know. So it's not like we didn't have it in our curriculum, you know. We've had it, it's there. I think we just need to revisit some of the ancient texts. I think it's all there. And so the education system needs to be more functional. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I want to thank you all for giving us time and for having this conversation with me. I've loved this conversation as much as I love the show. I wish you very, very good luck for all the projects that you choose to take on in the future and all the stories that you tell.